This video is sponsored by Shortboxed, the easiest and safest way to buy and sell comic books, both raw and graded. Download the app today using the link in the description. In this video, we are going to count down the top 10 most purchased books on the Shortboxed app for the entire year. This is a data set that I like to look at because I think that it tells us a lot about what it is that people are actively buying and adding to their comic collection. Now, admittedly, there are not a ton of new books that have been added to the list over the course of this year, but there are several that are on the brink of moving into the top 10, and I will run those books down at the very end of this video. Over the course of this video, I'm also going to be telling you about those books that have either moved up or moved down on the list. Lastly, be certain to leave a substantive comment behind on this video for a chance to win a $100 credit from my friends over at Shortboxed. And as I mentioned, there is a link down in the description to check them out. With that said, let's get to the books. Number 10 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300, the first full appearance of everyone's favorite symbiote, Venom. There are currently 28,000 Blue Label copies of Spider-Man's 25th anniversary issue on the census, with the 9.8 commanding a fair market value of $4,200. The most recent sales have been below this FMV. Number 9 is New Mutants 98, the first appearance of the Merc with the Mouth, Deadpool. Admittedly, there are other characters that have a first appearance in this book, but it is all about Deadpool and we know it. There are currently more than 23,000 Blue Label copies of this comic on the CGC census, with 18% of those landing a Blue Label 9.8. The 9.8 has a fair market value of $1,650, with recent sales above this FMV. Number 8, Amazing Spider-Man issue number 252, down one spot on the list. This comic is the first appearance of Spidey's black costume in the regular series. This book is also a homage to AF-15. There are currently just over 20,000 Blue Label copies of this comic on the census, with the 9.8 having a fair market value of $1,350. Recent sales of this comic have actually been less than this amount. Number 7 on the list is Something is Killing the Children issue number 1, including all of the variants. This book is actually down one spot on the list overall. The 9.8 for this modern classic from Boom Studios has seen its ups and downs, but it's been relatively flat for a year based upon data from Go Collect. The 30-day average is $625, and the most recent sales have been just shy of this mark at $610. Number 6 on the list is Uncanny X-Men issue 266, the first cover appearance of Gambit published by Marvel Comics in 1990. There are just over 20,000 Blue Label copies of this comic on the census, with the 9.8 having a fair market value of $775. The most recent sales for this book have been north of this mark. We've reached the midway point in the video, and I want to get your opinion of something. This video looks at the most purchased comics on the Shortboxed app. So far, we've looked at 5 books. 4 of those books have census counts north of 20,000 copies each. The one exception is Something is Killing the Children issue number 1, which has a much lower census count, specifically when you look at cover A. It's around 3,500 copies across all labels for that cover A. I'm not quite certain what this says about Something is Killing the Children or about the other books that are showing up on the list, but if you have thoughts here, sound off in the comment section and let me know what you think. Number 5 on the list is Spider-Man issue number 1, published by Marvel Comics in 1990. And yes, this includes all of the available variants. I specifically, however, want to focus on the top 3 direct edition covers. There are currently 11,000 of the green edition, 12,000 of the silver, and just 5,607 of the gold edition on the CGC census. The gold edition commands the highest fair market value with a 30-day average of $149. Number 4 on the list is Ultimate Fallout 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. This book is up one spot on the list and includes the second prints as well as the second print variants. There are currently 15,624 blue label copies of the first print of Miles Morales' first appearance on the census. This comic has a 30-day average of $1,574 against an FMV of $1,750. Number 3, Wolverine issue number 1, the limited series, and this book is up one spot on the list. There are currently 21,551 blue label copies of Wolverine's first solo series on the census. The 9.8 has an FMV of $700 and a 30-day average that is just $30 shy of this FMV. Number 2 is X-Men number 1 from 1991, the best-selling comic in history with more than 8 million copies sold. With that in mind, it's interesting that there are just 14,569 universal blue labels that have been graded by CGC. The Magneto cover has a fair market value of $90 with a 30-day average of $80. Now, what's really interesting is that the value of this book has been relatively flat for a year, declining from $83 to just $80 over that time period. And the number 1 book on the list is Marvel Superheroes Secret War issue number 8, the origin of the black costume that later becomes Venom. There are nearly 24,000 universal blue label copies of this comic on the census, with 22.4% of that number landing a 9.8. The 9.8 has a 30-day average value of $580. So as I mentioned at the top of the video, there are some interesting things that are happening outside of the top 10. And technically, we have one book that was tied for the top 10 along with Amazing Spider-Man. It is specifically Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 2, the first appearance of Gwen Stacy as Spider-Woman. Outside of this book, there are a couple of other books that are poised to enter the top 10, and it's going to be interesting to see whether they can actually do it. The books that I'm talking about include X-Men issue number 4, the first appearance of Omega Red, Star Wars issue number 1, and last but certainly not least, Spawn issue number 1. And again, we're going to see whether these books can make their way into the top 10 or whether the list remains constant through the remainder of the year. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to invite you to do so now. Go ahead, tap the button, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that I release. If you want to reach out to me, you can do it directly on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care. Before I let you go, if you are a comic book fan, a fan of indie comics, or fed up with the quality of stories being told by Marvel and DC, I want to invite you to check out my new comic called Marcus. Issue number 1 is dropping in October, and I can tell you that the creative team behind this comic has done an amazing job of telling a fantastic story, both with the written word but also with some amazing artwork. Again, the comic comes out in October, but show your love today by picking up a copy at SwoldierPublishing.com. Link in the description, and no, you will not regret it.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo, should you practice art? Or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master. The one that's more than a rapper. The one that's an educator. The one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts. He's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan. Straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations. Synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting. Indian style in the gold.